Alright, so I'm gonna be completely honest right off the bat. UI is not my favorite part of game development, but in order for this devlog to not feel like a complete drag, I'll try to make the video as entertaining as possible while also sounding very passionate about how much I love UI. Also, I'll have a small fun announcement at the end of the video, so please stick around for that. Sounds good? Let's get to it. Warning. The following content may or may not contain sarcasm. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Backware Games, and I've been working on my Fuddian game for about 1.5 years now. It's heavily inspired by games such as Jump King, Getting Over It, and of course, the recently released Only Up. My take on the genre though is making it a wacky physics-based game where the key selling point is an in-game level editor where players can create and share their levels with friends and the community. So, what's been going on since the last video? Well, UI, of course. It's in the title and thumbnail of this video, right? To show you how good of a UI UX designer I am, I'm gonna be breaking down my entire process of going from this to this. Now, hold up. What is the difference really between UI and UX? I'm here to tell you the truth. No one really knows. The separation between these two concepts is not a clear line, and oftentimes there's crossovers here and there, but let me tell you my definition of it. UX is the process of designing user flow of an application or a game. So essentially how a user interacts with the systems and navigate around while getting all the necessary information they need in the best way possible. UI, on the other hand, is where you take the UX design and turn it into something pretty functional and usually also add some juicy animations and so on. But how do we put this into practice? Well, this is where different workflows appear and things sometimes cross over into each other, but this is how I go about it. I start out with what's called wireframes and a wireframe map. These are essentially all the different screens in my game, how buttons and other important elements are laid out, and most importantly, how they all navigate back and forth between each other. These wireframes should only contain information about where the buttons are, which button does what, and how this wireframe leads to this other wireframe, and so on. But sometimes these wireframes also set up the mood and tone for the UI, with custom fonts and certain button styles, which some would argue actually goes more into the UI design of things and not UX, but in my opinion it doesn't hurt to add a little bit of flair during the UX process. I usually do all my wireframes in grayscale just to not get too distracted about which colors to use where and so on. This part of the process is mostly about how I lay out everything the right way in the application and in the most convenient way for the user. At this point I had laid out the full wireframe map and designed pretty much all of the screens for my game. You're looking at the result right now. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. The UX part of the process is, no joke, actually something I enjoy, despite what I said in the beginning of this video. But I think I enjoy it mostly because it's so easy to move elements around and try different things. It's a very fast and iterative process. Now to the UI part of this pipeline. This is where you take all of the UX and make it look good. And obviously this is where I, as a programmer, shine the most. Usually, my process simply involves taking the wireframe and start doing a color palette and experimenting until I find something I like. As you can see, I ran through a lot of different palettes until I found something I actually like. These are the final results of that. I chose this palette because they fit the colors of my game's character, Chuck Norris. They're also pretty saturated, giving it a more cartoony look. The font itself is also big and chunky in all caps to emphasize that even more. It's not necessarily gonna be the actual font used in the final version, but it's here to set the tone. Buttons themselves are these big blocky rectangles which have a slight 3D feel to it with the drop shadow underneath them. Everything has a very flat style look with simple colors, which I feel like fits the kind of comic book style look. After giving 3 or 4 wireframes the good old UI design treatment, I felt like it was enough for me to actually get started implementing it into the game itself. And oh boy, do I have some gripes with the UI system in Unity. I mean, I love working with the UI in Unity. It just works and nothing is ever wrong with it. I started out with a small UI kit scene to set up my labels and buttons as prefabs, with their animations made within the animation system and connected it to the different input states like hover, selected, and so on. With that, I started to implement the first screen, which obviously was going to be the main menu. I'm using a UI management system I've built beforehand to handle all the state and transitioning, so I only had to set up the UI components themselves and take care of each of the screen's custom logic. Many screens later, and I was finally done with what I would call good enough for now. It might not look super high quality and maybe it's a bit too simplistic, but at least to me, it doesn't look like a prototype UI anymore. But please, let me know in the comments what you think about the style and implementation of it all, or where it could get improved. I know I want to have some custom rooster animations in the main menu, where Clock Norris could perhaps swing into view with some ropes and something like that, and have a different idle animation. The way it's done now is simply to illustrate the idea. This whole process took a long time to get through, even though I was using my own framework around it. With UI, there's just so many edge cases and situations you need to deal with that you don't always expect. For example, you need to make sure to block all your input while you're uploading or downloading levels to not accidentally send too many requests to the server, or making sure each level list gets dynamically updated based on the different events like remove or delete. Stuff like that just takes time. I thought it might be a good idea to update you guys on the status of the game by showing you the project plan in each devlog and to be a bit more transparent about how things are moving along. If you remember in the previous video, we were right around here and now we're here. I know it doesn't look like much, but it's actually a pretty big step towards the MVP. This was one of the larger milestones for sure. Of course, it's not completely 100% done yet, but I need to get myself away from the UI for a while and get back into some work that feels more related to the game itself. Now, the next big thing I have to tackle is the graphics for the second area of the game, or technically third area if you're counting the tutorial area. I'm pretty excited to get back into making more tiles and level art. The area will have a sewer vibe to it with worn brick tiles and pipes and such. Also, not gonna lie, after Unity's whole debacle a few weeks ago, I'm slightly more worried with my choice of using their backend services for the user-generated content, but we'll see how things turn out. I'm cautiously optimistic, let's put it at that. But if I have to change it out at some point, it shouldn't be that big of a hassle, and that'll be future me's problem anyways. So now, I mentioned I had a little surprise for you guys at the end of the video. I've been brainstorming a lot of ideas for the name, and with some help from friends and colleagues, I think I've narrowed it down to a couple of names I really like, and surprise! This is where you come in. I've created a poll with a link down in the description, and I want you guys to vote on which one is your favorite. The names that I've chosen are the following: Chickens Don't Fly, Plungers Are Friends, Chunky Chickens. As you might have guessed, these names are a bit silly and meme-worthy, but that's exactly the point. I want the name to be weird and comically bad, but in a good way, to catch people's attention. So, there you have it. Go click the link in the description and vote. I'll reveal the final name in the next devlog, pinky promise. And that's it. Give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps. I'll make sure to keep you all posted with what's going on with this project. I'm very excited to get back to the game, and I hope you enjoy following along. I still read every single comment you leave, and I appreciate all of your support, so thank you. I'm out. Cheers.